Hey, hey, we are live. I'm here with Shane, who's the founder of Waking Digital, who transforms marketing for ambitious businesses. He also partners with other agencies, and he is a busy, busy man, so I'm very, very glad that he's here. Now, Shane has been doing loads of stuff with Slater. He's in the Slater Slack group pretty much every day, talking about what he's been up to. And he shared this Loom video of a project that he'd been working on where he basically recreated CMS Select from Finsweet for this bike project that he was working on. So we reached out, said, Shane, show us the goods. And we're just going to kind of do a little, I guess, a kind of jam of what Shane's been working on. And we'll just share stuff. Hopefully, it'll be really, really useful for anyone watching to learn, maybe be inspired about how to use Slater to the best way possible, whether you know JavaScript or not. Because if I'm right in saying this, Shane, you're not a JavaScript developer.
Correct. Yeah, definitely not. Oops.
So I think that
Uh,
is a lot of the people that are using Slater, and hopefully this session will just show you what you can achieve as someone that doesn't know code but is harnessing the power of Slater to actually make stuff. So I'll hand it over to you, Shane.
yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not a developer. I kind of hope to be by the end of the year. Like at least like kind of know what I'm doing, know what I'm getting into. But Slater has been super helpful, super powerful. Um, I feel like I am a dev. I mean, obviously I'm not, but I feel like I just have these superpowers like ready to go when I need them. And yeah, it's a lot different. Like I was trying to use ChatGPT to help me, and it gets running in loops pretty quickly, and it just gets stuck. And if you don't know what you're asking for, not it's not always super helpful. So Slater's been a lot better in that regard. Whereas like I'm just asking it plain English, and it's giving me back, you know, almost no more. Normally, it's pretty much ready code. Sometimes I have to prompt it one or two more times, but it's been really good. So I can go ahead and share my screen, and we can kind of get into this.
Yeah, and just to say off the back of what you just said there, I think it's important to say that JavaScript does look quite intimidating if you don't know JavaScript, but
No.
just knowing some key words so that you can actually give a prompt that is enough to get you like 90% of the way there seems to be like enough code at this level, as you're trying to just make
Hmm.
something.
Yeah.
And then the refinement stuff kind of comes the more you prompt the AI and Slater. So I think it's just really important to kind of highlight that.
Yeah. So this thing specifically, I guess we can show the demo, and then let's go kind of work our way backwards. So this is just a little demo site here. This is a form, and it's got basically. Let's just do this. So I've gotten a lot better at using inspect here, and we can kind of see what's going on. So something went wrong. Let's see. Okay.
For any absolute coding newbies that are watching, inspect, just right click and then inspect, right? I mean, you're not doing anything
Correct.
more foreign than that. It's just that when you're on a page on Google.
Yeah. So what's happening here is this select field has these values in it, like we see on the page, but they're actually coming from this collection list, which is hidden on the page. Um, and there you see uh, those. So in the project, let's go ahead and just kind of open this up a little bit. Oops. I guess we need to go a little bit bigger. Um, there it goes. Uh, in the project here, so within the form element itself, I've just dropped in a collection list, and this is just pulling the text. So basically, you just have to put names on there for the code to pull in, and then it makes those actual select fields within or on the publish side, I guess. Um, and yeah, when the data gets pushed through, it will be this. So yeah, let's go kind of work backwards then to Slater. So how did I do this? So here was my first prompt. I said, can you write me code that will look at the attribute of a CMS collection? How did I do this in Webflow and preset? Okay, so basically the plan was to tag the CMS list with an attribute, pull that whole collection list, and then place it into the select field. So that was kind of the idea there. And this code actually did that. So that code, this code right here, which is really cool, you can just pull these on there. That code is good. That code worked. You properly place these attributes, and this will take a CMS list and place in a select field. That was good. That worked. Where I got stuck and where I had a limitation of the Finsweet version of CMS Select is that it doesn't play well with other code unless you really, really know what you're doing, which I'm not a developer. So that's why the initial piece of this was to replace that CMS Select system. And then what I needed to do, or for this specific project and this specific client, we wanted to match the service name slug of the URL to the service. So they had quite a few different services, and we wanted to do that. And so let's go back. How did we do this?
Can I just ask then? So this is like a practice. This bike template website that you're making is actually just a practice for a real client project, which you're like, okay, I need to work out a system that works for this specific problem. So I'm going to recreate that scenario using this bike project, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was just the homepage here that that does what it's supposed to do. Then on the CMS page, what it's doing is it's actually looking for this piece of the slug, and it's auto-selecting that in this form. So if we do Trek, if we just change this slug here, and these are just some bike brands, now we get Trek.
Cool.
And so that's where I needed that function. Couldn't get that to work with the Finsweet CMS Select. So that's when I went back and said, let me just make my own version. So let's kind of work our way down here, which is great. Slater just tells you kind of how to implement these. And if it doesn't give it clear enough, just reprompt it, and it's really good.
So when you're reprompting, can I just ask you about that? Because I think the prompts are one of the biggest pieces of this puzzle for you to actually get the code you want. And there seems to be a little bit of an art form to asking prompts and then refining prompts once you've asked the initial prompt. Do you have any tips for anyone that's watching that's like, yeah, he's talking a lot about prompts, but how do you even know what to write if you can't code?
Yeah, so my thing is I try to use plain English. And part of that is long term, right? The AI is going to learn plain English, and it's going to work really well with plain English. So I'm actually thinking a little bit ahead of like trying to train it to work better for people who don't know how to code. But part of really what I do is I just think as clearly as possible, okay, I need this CMS list in this select field. How do I say that? Obviously, we have to tag. I know enough about code to know this. We have to tag both elements on the page with something. The code has to be able to look and say, what is even on this page and what am I going after? So you can use classes, you can use IDs, and you can use attributes. There may be others, but those are really the biggest ones. Attributes are, I don't know, they're just kind of the go-to, obviously, for the Finsweet stuff. But there is sometimes weird things with like going after a class versus an ID versus, so it just really use case. So attributes are just a good way to, it's only going to target that. Our classes don't matter. They're not going to affect the code. So yeah, I guess, well, let's look at this piece of the prompt. The end result needs to be a form select field with all the CMS items in it as selectable options. So it never hurts to tell the prompt twice, but in two different ways. So I asked it for what I needed, and then I told it what the end result needed to be for this to be what I want. So I'm sure that helped in this prompt, because literally this prompt worked, right? Like this is a complete replacement of getting a CMS list into a select field. We're good. Where I got, that limitation was matching the URL. And so I think if we move down here, we'll find where I got that. So this was me putting in some code and saying, I was probably asking a question. I think what I did was I went into another Slater project just to get a separate thread going. which you could also just create another page and get that going as well. I'm using this really just as AI strictly. I'm not implementing this on the project, which this could obviously do. And I think I had written the code to match the URL slug. So
So
let's see.
that
Yeah, it's looking for that split there. Go ahead. Did you have something?
Sorry, I was just going to ask you. So, just out of interest, why haven't you connected this to your Webflow project, or is it just you're like, oh, I just want to, I don't know, quickly use it just to check the code rather than to actually publish it to your site?
Yeah, I'm for right now. I'm just using it as like a little sandbox just to get code going with the AI. But I do have one we can look at later where I do have the global tags embedded on the project, um, just because I wanted to test that functionality, which this is super cool. So I definitely once I have a little more time, I really want to dive in to get a decent sized project going in Slater that syncs completely with Webflow the way you guys are intending this to be. Um, but yeah, so this code is looking. This one is trying to inspect the URL and looking for that split slug. What I ran into was this, is that I couldn't get the code to look for the last part of the slug. It was finding something else, and so it wasn't working. And so that's where I and Slater hit a limitation. Um, this is me putting code again to see what it can do. Whoops. And it was not working. So this is where I handed this bit of code off to my friend Ben Sabick. He's on Twitter,
Mm.
and he cleaned it up in like 5 minutes. Because I don't know code, so I was like, this isn't working, but I know it's really, really close. And so he was able to just find what was wrong. And so that's how we got to this right here. This, finds the slug and it matches this service. And there's so many use cases for this. You could hide this field, so it's just attribution, which I did that a little while ago on Twitter, embedding the URL into a contact form hidden. So there's a lot of ways to get some like light attribution going. You could feed this into a HubSpot, an Airtable, a Coda, and you could take all your data and just make all kinds of charts and cool stuff. Um, yeah, there's just so many ways you could take this. Um,
So, I've got a project at the moment which I think maybe is quite relevant for this. So, I have all these different forms on a gazillion different CMS pages. And what I'm trying to do is to get that data into an Airtable database. But what I need
mhm.
to do is tag every single different form so that all that information goes, so that each different form goes into a different Airtable page. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Is that a Slater use case, or is there an easier way to do this? Sorry, this is such a selfish question, but I'm just intrigued as to why there's so
Yeah.
many different use cases for Slater and how that might be relevant for getting data across from forms into an Airtable database.
Yeah, here's what I would do. I would probably. Hmm, do you want to? What are you trying to match? I guess is the question. Are you trying to match a service name or some sort of piece of? Can we pull data from the slug to then embed into this form? Would that help?
Yes, it would actually.
Okay, so if we could pull the end piece of the slug and that name, whatever that data is, whether it's a service or something else, if we could get that into the form, even if it's just in a hidden field, we could send that to Airtable, and then in Airtable automations, when you fill out all your tables, right? You could just match that data to the name of the table. So you
Hmm.
would need to set up on that Webflow project in the back end. I have a back end pulled up, so I'll show you real quick. Under integrations, you would just want to set up a webhook. And in Airtable, it's super simple. You just turn on an automation from a webhook. You drop that URL in here, do form submission. The problem is all your forms on your project are going to land there. So then we have to filter in Airtable or somewhere else. There has to be filtering somehow. So there, you may look at like HookDeck for this. That's a great way to filter all your data. Um, but yeah, Slater would definitely come in handy to get the relevant piece of data to Airtable to then use to filter later on so that we can fill out your content wherever you need it in Airtable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Slater is the use case for Slater is often not necessarily like I need tons and tons of JavaScript. It's actually just like a little piece of the puzzle that
Hmm.
might be the game-changing piece of the puzzle for you to really level up your projects. Just
Yeah.
in this use case that you've showed me, and maybe for my project as well. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
really interesting example.
Let me let me jump to let's go to this one. So
Yeah, let's dig
uh,
in.
another Finsweet thing. So it's great, right? Finsweet stuff is awesome, but you will start to hit limitations when you're trying to do more. So I'm going to reference that probably a couple times, but obviously a lot of people use those and they're great power ups. But um, maybe you just want your own CMS select, right, or whatever. So, anyways, they have the social share buttons. Well, email's one I don't believe they have. I think someone else has it, but anyways, let's jump into this.
I
So
think Flowbase might actually.
yeah, and Refocus might have one too, but
Yeah.
let's see. So how did I? Again, somehow I started this code somewhere else, and it maybe have been ChatGPT for some reason. This was what 2 weeks ago. So this code wasn't working, um, and it may have been another Slater project, honestly. So I asked if it could be improved, and it went ahead and improved it. And it looks like this is. I'm trying to see if this is the same code here. No,
Wow,
it
it's
might be Slater.
interesting that you literally just said, "Could this code be improved?" as a prompt.
Slater's so good
That's
at that. Slater.
crazy.
I've done it with so much code, and Slater is like really good. It's like, nope, you shouldn't use this because of this. You shouldn't use this because of this. Go ahead and use this set of code. And I'm just like, oh my
Mm,
gosh. Um, because there's certain sets of code. Um, Again, not a developer, but like mutation observers, you can have a lot of issues with those. They're great, and I'm using them on another project right now. And actually, Noah Raz can help me with that code. That's a whole other story. But I ran it through Slater just to see like, am I going to hit any issues with this code if we put more code, right? Code breaks, so you do have to think about that kind of stuff. But let's go back to this. So basically, we're trying to create a button that opens up email. So here's the live site, and this will populate somewhere on my screen. Okay, so it's not going to show because I'm only sharing the Chrome window, but now Mail, Apple Mail did pop up, and it is working.
okay.
And you can place the email you want it to. Uh, I shouldn't have clicked that. There's all these extra windows. Anyways, so it does work. Sorry, can't show it, but
So
so
just to be clear for anyone that's watching who's like, wait, what's happening? Because we didn't see that. What when you click on that Webflow project, what will happen is it will open the email window so that you can share whatever that page is with someone else automatically. Is that what's happening?
actually, so this one, you know what? We just caught that. So I was kind of trying to create a social share, but actually, maybe I don't have the data in there right. But this is simply opening up a email. Let's see. The subject line is email social share. So
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
spend too long. I didn't spend too long on this code, but that was the goal, was to get an email social share function. Um, but actually, it's maybe we just have to fill in the data properly. But yes,
Hmm.
that's what we're going for. So, and actually, what I did with this project is I did use the global script here. So over in Webflow here, on the global footer, um, we're connecting the whole project. Um, and
So
then I don't.
just for anyone that's watching who's like, wait, what's happening? Essentially, for Slater to be connected to your project, you need to get the global script, put it in um, the custom code section of your website, or in the
Yeah,
footer section on the actual project.
correct. Because we want, this is when we add a lot more code, but we want the code is living in Slater and it's being connected via this script from Slater.
It's like a
Um,
like a nexus.
yeah, and I'm trying to remember if I had to do a page level on this or not. I don't think so. But let's just double check. Because then you can do those page level scripts. Um, or can you? Is it global? I may not even know this, to be honest. It may just be the one global script, and then, oh, that's what it is. It's the global script, and it looks for the slug, and it only loads. So if you had like an about page, let's just, oh wow, it's seeing that. Okay, that's cool. If you had an about page, and we added code to this, Slater's only going to add the code you put in the about page on the about page because it can see the slug. Sorry, I may have jumbled that up there, but I guess it is just a global script. Yeah, there's nothing page level. Cool. Yeah, so there's the button. Pretty basic. Yeah, and the prompting, I guess I pulled this from somewhere else. So, but this would be pretty simple to prompt. I mean, it would just be, hey, can you give me a set of code that will make a button share, I guess you could share this link via email and force open the desktop email default app or something like that. A lot of different ways to prompt this, but this basically works. So yeah.
Another really good use case, like a little use case. It's not like you're trying to take over the world necessarily. Like as someone that's not the most experienced. Yeah. Well, maybe not yet, Shane, but in a year's time. But as in like it's a small use case, but important for your client's needs maybe, and it just supercharges your workflow project in that little piece of the puzzle that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So. And here's a Slick.js slider. I love Slick.js now. I am sold. It is my go-to.
Oh yeah. Okay. Can we see the Webflow project if it's there as well?
Yes, I can show you this project. So I was actually going to show a different portion of this project, but
okay.
Yes,
sorry.
No, you're good. That's if we got to it. So let's get to it. Let's see.
So this is a client project, is it?
Yes. We'll just do the homepage one here. So, so here we have blogs, right? These are obviously CMS, and here's a little Slick.js slider. Mm-hmm. So I think it was it Wit who did this video the other week?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So I went into Slater, and I went for the Slick.js. I feel like I hit a few limitations early on, but I just kept going at it. So let's go back to the project. Okay, so I'm not going to dive deep into that project, but basically you drop these into the footer. For whatever reason, you don't put these in the head. I know it says that, but Wit said you skip that part. And then, yeah, you just target a slider, and then you target a class. So... yeah, so there's that piece. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, okay.
Don't you worry.
So... Alright, so in the project, yeah, we're basically, what we're doing is we're targeting we're adding a div, we're putting an ID of slider on there, and then the CMS list is getting this name.
Blog list test.
Yes.
Okay.
I probably changed that in the actual project, but let's see what's going on here. So, all right, cool. So in the project itself, all I did was create a div with the class of slider and then the ID of slider. Now the ID is the only thing that matters for this specific one. And then let's dig in a little farther here. All right, so there's the slider element. The collection list. Yeah. Probably just be easier to go into this project. But basically, that will get us this function. And a lot of the code is pretty straightforward. So we just want to tell it how many slides to show, um, how many to scroll at a time, the time frame, and then uh, yeah, um, not nothing too crazy.
So a bit of a boring question, but what if your client
For it.
was like, Shane, we're going to add a new blog post or whatever? Then do you need to go back into Slater and then change that for your client?
Sorry, say that again.
As in,
What do I need?
if they were to add a new CMS item, I assume these are blog posts. Uh,
Yeah.
then you would need to go back into Slater to add that, would you?
This list specifically is a featured switch in Webflow CMS. So this really is going to kind of manage itself. This list on the front page is a featured switch, and so yeah, this will manage itself. But there definitely is use cases where you may have to change things after the fact. I'm trying to
Yeah.
think.
Well, I guess if they
Um,
added a new slide, so say if they were like, it looks like you've got five there right now. So if you were to add another one, then I guess you'd have to go back into Slater and actually, type, you know, six if they were to add one more, for example, for that to work.
hmm,
But if they were to just swap out a featured slide for a different featured slide, obviously that wouldn't affect Slater, the code in Slater, I mean.
yeah. So these the Slater code. Let's look at it again. Um, is actually just showing slides. So no matter how many
Ah,
pieces,
okay.
yeah, yeah. So no matter how many pieces are in the collection list, um, it won't change much. So they could fill this list with 30, but we'd only see three on the screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Because I
Yeah.
was thinking, oh, this would be a bit of a faff if you had a client that wanted to change that CMS content. If they were to be like, oh, we want to have whatever 20 different slides, and you were like, oh, okay, I've got to change that. But actually, what you're saying is that it's only showing three. And then, how did you make this responsive?
So it actually came responsive. If you notice these breakpoints here, um, you can say, yeah. So this is great.
Dreamy, dreamy.
Yeah. So it looks for obviously a pixel width, and then you can change the number of slides to show. Let me see if I can find. I think on one of these other pages.
Just while you're looking for that, if anyone has watched Wit's tutorial on the Slater underscore app YouTube channel, which if you didn't know exists, is really helpful for learning JS related content and using Slater. He actually does the Slick.js tutorial, but
Mhm.
what he doesn't actually talk about is the responsiveness stuff. So it's really interesting going a bit deeper with you here.
Yeah, so this page specifically is still Slick.js here, but I only wanted one to show. So what I did in the code for this was slides to show was one, and then on every breakpoint it was also one. So you could do that. So on that home page CMS there, three are showing, which is what you see here,
Mm-hmm.
and then two, and then one if we were to scale this down, but it would
And
get kind
And
of
you've
gross and
just
small.
you've just set those to cover the pictures there then
The pictures are set to cover,
of
yeah,
those CMS. Yeah.
probably. Most of that all CSS from the collection list is respected, as far as I can tell. So however you set stuff up natively in your collection list is going to be respected. All it's doing is placing this into a slider, basically.
Okay,
Um,
awesome. That's really good to know.
yeah. So let's see what else. Oh, you know what? I was really proud of this one.
Yeah, show
Let
it,
me
show it.
go find this. It's so simple. It's so simple. Sorry, give me one sec.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of
Um,
interesting seeing someone else's Webflow space as well. It's just like there's loads
I
of
try to
projects
stay
everywhere.
organized, but um, let's check. I believe it's this one. I've tried this. Okay, so let's see. 444, 444. Yeah, this is it. So I tried to get this prompt multiple times from ChatGPT. Now, this was a little while ago, but it's not been around that long, and it just could not do this, and I don't know why. Excuse me. So what was happening was if I went to backspace, whole thing got messed up. All it's doing is formatting code. It doesn't allow any text. It's only numbers, and then it formats it. So what was interesting, and I don't have the Slater project for this to be honest, but um, was that it made me put code in the head and the body. And this one, yeah, I definitely had to prompt this quite a few times, but I did get it. So simple, but this little level up for a project, I mean, clients will love. You can say, look what I did with a little bit of code. Um, and it makes a better user experience, stuff like that. But ChatGPT just couldn't do this. And there were just errors and stuff when you hit backspace and all kinds of stuff. Um, so yeah, super simple, but again, just a small little way to power up. I think it's using jQuery libraries to do this.
So what's
Yeah,
your process when so you hit a problem? Do you do you then go straight to, um, I guess maybe YouTube to like search if someone's got a solution, or how? Like, talk me through the process of getting to a problem in Webflow, and then thinking, okay, I reckon Slater can help me solve this.
yeah, and I'm trying to find that specific project. I just start hitting limitations of stuff, and now it's the process is straight to Slater. There's no YouTube, there's no anything like that. I've been around the Webflow community enough to kind of know where a lot of the solutions are. Um, so occasionally I go to Made in Webflow, but now it's just to Slater and can code do this, which the answer is always yes. It's just how do I arrive there? Um, yeah, I mean to me there's no more limitations. It can be done with code. And some of the stuff I've been solving too is just like stuff I see on Twitter, like, hey, I can't get this to work, or how do I do this, or friends reaching out, and I'm like, code can definitely do that. Let me figure out how. Um, yeah, I guess yeah. The process is just go in there and start prompting it. Um, but really, that plain English. I mean, this was like, can you make a number, a phone number field formatted correctly after its input or as it's being input? Because I think it adds. Let's see. This one waits for. So it kind of throws the dash in there, but then it goes away and then comes back at the end. So I think this one was waiting for 12 characters or 10 characters, I guess, to be inputted, and then it formats. Um, yeah, I don't know. Just start prompting because then you'll learn, and I guess you'll kind of see. Okay, wait, it doesn't respond very well to that. Just prompt it again. Sometimes in Slater it does help because it does, for your benefit, it saves the whole thread. But sometimes when it does get stuck, it's good to clear the chat um, or go into a new thread somewhere else. Um,
And you can also
yeah.
archive the chat as well in the bottom right of the screen as well. So if anyone's like,
Yes.
oh wait, I want to save this, potentially come back to it, potentially just delete it, but like let's keep it for now. There's in the in the bottom right you can just click chat archive.
Yes.
Um,
And actually, I did send one of those to someone was helping me in Slater the other day, and I had to send them a chat archive. But what's also cool is if you do get stuck on the code and you want to send this to like a dev or a friend, you can just send them this public page read only link. Um, so that's super cool as well.
and I guess that's the one that you sent to Ben when you were like, how do I do this?
Yeah, yeah. He definitely helped with that.
Shout out to Ben. Everyone needs a Ben in their life when they get to a difficult
He's
project.
he's great. Um, so let me show you one more, and then I'll kind of let you ask away other questions.
Sure.
Okay, so this one was fun. Let me take you to a page real quick. So where this is in rich text fields, and what's happening is you see these nested lists happening.
Hmm.
This is code. So I found this really cool power up here, just online somewhere. Basically, all you do is add these two libraries of code, and then you tag your rich text fields with this attribute, and then you indent the code with a greater than sign. And so, how did I do this? Okay, so kind of lazy version of me. I wanted to tag every rich text field in the project the with these attributes, so I didn't have to go through manually. So that's what I wrote here. So this code adds that attribute to every rich text field on the site, and then if there is those greater than signs, it will then run the other functions because it's seeing that attribute. So that was super cool to get working.
So this project you linked with Slater directly with the global code then?
I did not. I did embed that code. But yeah, we're using a power up from someone else, and then I'm tagging every rich text field with those attributes with code so that this code will run. This is like a 65-page project. So rather than going through every rich text field that needs this and adding that attribute, we're just adding the attribute with code. Now I'm assuming, now that I think about this, they probably have to be in a certain order so that everything executes properly. But it's working. So it's just a fun little way to be like, you know what? Rather than going through every page and adding these attributes, I'm just going to let code work for me. And then this, little snippet of code will also run. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. Okay, so that saved you a ton of time, I guess.
Loads of time. I mean, if you can imagine being on some, I don't know, bigger project, or even if, let's say, because you could probably target every rich text field, but we're targeting one with a class. But maybe you don't want to target every rich text field, or you only want this to execute on certain things. There's so many different variables to this. Maybe it's just easier to do it globally and not add the attributes, whatever. There's a million ways you could kind of go at this, but yeah, it's just like, I was probably more up for the challenge this day. I was like, you know what, I'm going to make Slater do this rather than doing it. Yeah.
That's so cool. All of these examples are like so tangible, and also I feel like quite approachable for someone that's not a coder. Like, I'm not a developer either, and I'm like, okay, that's a really interesting use case that I hadn't actually envisaged using Slater for. But obviously there's things that, like you said, in Webflow, there are limitations that you might come up against, and then it's like, yeah, I think Slater could probably just solve that for me. So when you hit that wall, it makes sense to jump over here. Do you have any advice for someone that's like maybe quite intimidated with JavaScript and is like, I don't really know like whether Slater's for me because I don't know JavaScript? Would you just say, just jump in and just get making stuff, or kind of how would you kind of approach it?
I guess my first rule of thumb is to always push Webflow to the limitations in other things, but I wouldn't be scared of it. Like, it's not too crazy. I mean, if we just look at the script, like, this is pulling from a library. Okay, don't even think about it. Just work right past that. Actually, this code was cleaned up. This was deleted here, this portion. Whoops. See if we undo that. We only need this one right here. But, JavaScript can only target stuff on the page. And so somehow we have to tell it that. So it's either classes, IDs, or attributes. So this is an ID, this is a class. That hash is a telltale sign, that's an ID. The dot before something is a class. I think the attribute is just two of the light parentheses around it, or the apostrophes. But it's kind of straightforward when you really start to just look at it. But if you don't even want to think that far, I would just think in plain English. Just go to Slater with plain English, see what it gives you, drop it in Webflow, and just publish the page. And if you don't know, ask it, how do I implement this into Webflow? It's normally very clear. and gives you very good responses. I don't see one here, but I ask it a lot. Even if I know how to do it, I'll just ask it, hey, can you tell me how to implement this just so I know and I'm not, wasting time and then publishing again. Or if you just connect this right up to Webflow, drop the code, you just take the code from here and you just drop it right in, and then publish this and then go refresh your Webflow project. Yeah, so there's definitely a couple ways to go at it, but I just say have fun and tell yourself there's no limitation, right? Code can do almost anything you can think of. It's just getting to that end result. So, yeah.
I love that advice though. That it's not to be scared of, because you've literally got like the sum of human knowledge just in that right hand panel that is there to help you. Like, you are not alone with code with Slater. I think that's something that I find really nice, because if you go to W3 Schools or something that obviously has that information, but there's kind of a lot of brain power needed to be like, okay, how does this information translate into my actual situation that I'm in? Whereas with Slater, it's like with you in the project, and I think that's something that makes it a lot less intimidating, I find.
Yeah, and even, when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is such a simple way to put a CMS collection list into the select field. I know const now just means this is a constant, right? This is always going to be what it says it is. But, basically you really just want to look for this I believe it's going to always be in yellow. These are all attributes. The attributes are with these brackets around it. So don't be intimidated, but then honestly just go here and just say, hey, how do I implement this? Am I targeting IDs? Am I targeting attributes? Am I targeting classes? What are all the steps I need to take? A couple different ways you could prompt that. And you'll be good to go. So I just like the idea of I have no limitations. There's really nothing that's going to stop me from building whatever. Now, if it's crazy from a client request or whatever, that's one thing. But I guess that's just kind of my thought and approach towards it.
So speaking of, where is Shane going on this JS journey now? I mean, you've shown us some examples of things that you've made so far, but are you like, right, I'm going to take on Mark Zuckerberg now? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is definitely to learn JavaScript very well. I'm hoping by the end of the year that I'm a half decent. Sorry, I'm realizing my computer's about to die too. I'm a half decent JavaScript developer. What's super cool is like I'm learning to just start to read it, right? With Slater. And so I guess where I see myself is a pretty decent dev, but I need a little assistance. I need a little AI to help me. And give it years and you just learn the stuff. If you look at something long enough, you'll eventually figure out what it's doing, or what it's saying. So yeah, that's kind of where I see myself. I'm going through a little course on Udemy, pretty highly rated guy that teaches JavaScript. So yeah, I'm hoping with that and Slater and friends, and who knows what else I'll dive into, but yeah, just to learn it. That's kind of where I see myself.
One of the biggest bits of advice that I've heard successful people say is be around people that are better than you. And I think Slater is, I know this is a bit meta, but Slater is that person. Like, that you've got a kind of coach who you can ask dumb questions to, and ask not only what, but how and why. And that's extremely powerful. So yeah, I guess if anyone's watching this and is like, how do I it's all at your fingertips, literally. So yeah, dive in.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what else you make with Slater. I feel like we need multiple sessions. Maybe in a few months' time, you'll have, I don't know, made another eBay, and we'll be like, okay, we got to dive into this one. And also, if anyone's watching and is like, how do I get more involved in Slater and the community? there's a Slack group. So if you send me a DM, um, I'm at Jack Redley1. I'm helping to manage the community stuff. So if you want to get involved, keep more up to date with the events and stuff, they're all there. And there's also a newsletter called the Slater Roundup, which we send out every week, which hopefully provides you loads of value and confidence and inspiration too. But Shane, you've been an absolutely wonderful spotlight session. Do you have anything else to say to people before we wrap this up? And I would also share it like Shane has done, share that goodness because, if you're pushing a car down a road and everyone can see you push that car and you're struggling, then other people are going to come and help you push. Same here, if you're struggling on a project or if you've worked something out and you know that other people might, find this useful just like Shane's done, share that with the community either on Twitter or in the Slack, like I say, because there's an incredibly supportive group of people who are well up for helping. Just like Ben, just like Shane. So yeah, do it. Awesome. Thanks so much, Shane. You've been an excellent guest, an example of someone that's like not the world's best coder, but you're doing loads of interesting stuff in JavaScript with Slater, so it's really cool. Awesome. Yeah, Jake's another person that we're going to have on for the spotlight sessions because he's making loads of cool stuff. He's a real tinkerer, Jake. I get the vibe. He's always got something on the low heat, just tinkering away. But yeah, thanks so much. This is going to be on YouTube, and we're going to chop this up into little bits as well. So hopefully it will be delightful for someone to watch. Cheers, Shane.